Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Pitch to Will. Swung on, hit well to right field. That's going to take Frelick back to the track, to the wall. It is gone, a home run. Into the home run seats for Will Smith. A two-run homer.
Here it comes from Mercado, and that's drilled high in the air to deep right field. Marsh going to go to the wall. We have liftoff. A three-run home run by Kelnick. And the Braves have jumped all over this rookie Mercado, and it's 4-0 Atlanta.
0-1 pitch is hit well. Right center field. Going backhand zone. Looking for the wall. That ball is gone. Game-tying blast. George Springer.
2-2 and swinging a high fly ball right field. Deep. Going back Benson at the fence. Looking up. And it's gone. A home run. How about it? Zach McKinstry, 2-out, 2-run home run.
Pitch. Swung on and hit high in the air. Deep left field. Dubon is back. He's at the base of the wall. He leaps. It's gone. And the Twins win. Christian Vasquez will walk off his former team.
Yes, and match Navarro.
Emma Navarro. The fans didn't know the name before. They are too by now.
6-4, 6-3.
This battle of friends, Emma Navarro outplays Coco Gauff and moves through to a Wimbledon quarterfinal.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla after a long weekend. What's up, DB?
What up?
Oh, just chilling on the Pillar Exterior stage here.
I like the Pillar Exterior stage. It's a mouthful.
I like it. I like it when everybody puts stuff back where it was, which it was this morning. So that's nice.
It's good. I got a nice book. I believe Gorman might be like the butler on Mr. Deeds.
He's just very, very sneaky.
He just popped in, popped out. He left me a book that I'm pretty excited about.
He must have shipped that here because he's in Canada.
Yeah. Ooh, why? He's fishing?
I don't know why. I mean, it's vacation, but I don't know why Canada.
Yeah, they got some pretty parts.
He's outdoorsy.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah, like
you can totally tell.
He's kind of got the Grizzly Adams thing going on.
One time we talked about. I'm gonna blow the term, but when you put you attach the deal that you camp into the back of your truck.
Like camper?
Yeah, that's the generic term. But
the one like the pull behind or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like he has one of those, and he talks about camping quite a bit.
Yeah, he's got one of the like old school like silver ones. The one like I think they're called like Airstreams or something.
Oh, the little ones that look like little silver Tylenols.
His looks pretty big though.
Like a bullet.
Yeah. They look like the Coors Light train.
Yeah.
Like in the commercials.
Yeah.
So he must have had that shipped here, or maybe he had like a little messenger drop it off.
He said that he listened to one of our segments, and he's like, "Wow, that's pretty deep. I think you'd like this book." So I looked it up, and I texted him. I said, "Oh man, that'd be awesome." I haven't read a different. It's called The Creative Act.
Is that the Rick Rubin one?
A Way of Being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So either he thinks I'm smart or I need to get smart.
Maybe a little bit both.
Certainly not Maxwell smart. So yeah, it's crazy week.
Yeah, busy weekend.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about July, man. There's 3 birthdays.
Yeah.
Well, 2. So Maya's is the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Jay's is today.
Happy birthday, Jay.
I have not seen her. Anniversary is the 22nd.
Oh, mine's the 26th.
Obviously Tuesday happened.
Yeah.
Funeral was yesterday, and then there's my dad this month on the 15th, which was a week before we got married.
Yeah.
Same year. So, July's got some ups and downs, and then we had
this weekend.
Man.
We got media days at the end of the month. But then we had a little coaching turnover in July.
So when I was asking about Big Ten Media Days, I'm already trying to gear my mind.
Okay.
Because
yeah.
I'm going to be coming fresh off a team camp for Westside next week, and I was just thinking, how do I have to do my bandwidth?
Yeah. You kind of prepare yourself for.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what do is it fiber optics? That's probably not the right term. My
Uh,
BPSs, like what? I don't know, something like that.
I mean, the optics cable carry the
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I think you're okay.
So I was just trying to like get ahead of it.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be out in Indy, which will be fun.
Yes, we will.
So you can catch the shows live from Indy.
We're actually doing 2 days.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's just because it makes the show easier.
It's always about the show. I get it.
Well, I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
The show's got to go on.
The show does have to go on. But yeah, we'll be out in Indy, and I imagine.
I can't believe we have to travel together.
I think you're going to be super excited about it.
I don't know.
I asked you if you wanted to be roomies, and you're like, I need my own room.
Yeah, I can't even believe you asked me that.
Listen, trying to, save some money where we can.
I was like, are you nuts?
I just, thought I might like bring back some road trip memories for you.
Man, I'm 50. I don't even like roommates at home.
So I imagine something that's going to get addressed at media days, or at least asked about. I don't know if he'll address it or not. Is the coaching turnover we had this weekend?
Yeah.
If you haven't, if you're like, hey, I'm gonna unplug this weekend, and
which a lot of people did for
Yeah.
Friday 4th of July post 4th of July weekend. There
Yeah.
weren't even a lot of people around.
No, so I think a lot of people kind of unplugged and unwinded a little bit, which is unwound, maybe. I think
Wound.
it's unwound.
I'll go with wound.
Which is good, but you may have missed that Nebraska has a new defensive backs coach, or will shortly have a new defensive backs coach. I don't think it's official yet. But Evan Cooper offered his resignation Friday, and by Saturday had the word was out that he would be replaced by John Butler, who has quite the resume, to be fair. But let's start with Coop. I fair to say, pretty shocking.
Yeah, I think the brevity of it, like the finality, was extremely shocking. And
because there was really no rumors, like there was not a lot on the front end.
Yeah, and had a conversation late Friday afternoon. I missed the first. Well, I won't even get into that. But so I was like, huh, interesting. And given what the crux of the day was already, yeah, that was tough, right? Because you got meeting with the pastors, and you're getting arrangements and stuff decorated and picking out the church, and so it was a very just a wild day to begin with.
I mean, you're doing like heavy real life stuff.
Like real life stuff.
Like this, I get that this affects people, but
so,
it's, this is football still.
So, whatever, hung up, and I'm like, do I have this conversation now or later?
You mean with Caleb?
Yeah.
Was he at home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
you knew before him?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I called him in, and
did you decide to do it right away?
I waited probably 10 minutes.
But before it broke widely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. By
10, 15 minutes.
No, because when did I text you?
5.
Yeah.
So you probably told me right after.
As an hour almost.
Yeah.
So, and I talked to him for a second, 4:30. I had to regain I had to get it back together.
Right.
That conversation was only like 5 or 6 minutes.
How do you take it? Because he liked Coop a lot, right?
He took it surprisingly well.
Yeah.
I'm surprisingly well. He said, he said, I'm going to do what I always do. I just got to trust in the Lord. Like, I'm going to be fine. And I said, you know, your ability to receive instruction is one of his strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we talked about a couple of other things, and then he was short for a little while, but some of it was the mood in the house too, so you couldn't really
tell what it was about. Yeah.
Right. But you know, I talked to him, you know, last night because he had to be back
Early this morning, right?
No, yesterday.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, double
They
whammy.
started this morning.
Well, they had meetings.
Gotcha.
So they had player meetings.
Gotcha.
So he had to be back, but he had some high V bucks that he had to use. So he wanted to do it first because it's use it or lose it.
Yeah.
Because they were going to reload. They reload the cards on Monday. So he, you know, had a couple calls on the way down there about some I'm sure we'll get to later on with Coach Knighton. But you know, he's good.
Yeah.
He's
so let me ask you,
very good.
Did you have when you were kind of mentally preparing to have this conversation with Caleb, did you have an expectation of how he was going to react?
Yes.
How did you think it was going to
go? Not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that from your experience with him or your experience having similar conversations with other people, or a little bit of both? And there's a reason I'm asking.
No, that's fine. I think it's I think it was because his personality. You know, I sat in how many of those DB meetings, right? So I'm like, he's got a strong personality. Like, they have his demeanor. So I just wanted, and part of me, I mean, if you're just peeling the whole onion back, part of me liking him being around people that are kind of have different temperaments and personalities and different delivery styles than mine is just so he's well-rounded. You know, it's one of the reasons I wanted Ryan Terry to coach him.
Prepared
at Low Vikes, right? Like, Ryan could, being in that culture and what they were building there was something different than I could give him in the moment, but I felt like it was something he would need.
Something that was important.
Later on. Same way I felt about Coach Cooper. Like, you have to learn to compete with the best of the best for a coach that is
demanding,
very demanding, and not always going to talk to you in a way that I would.
Well,
and I was okay with that.
And you need to be able to.
So that's why I felt like, you know, and he liked him so much. But the conversation, so to backtrack, so the conversation that I had earlier, which turned out to be longer than I think either one of us thought it was going to be, on the phone, one of the things that I think is really, really good, and this is the practical application of it. When Nebraska recruits, it's typical. Well, I think for our experience, I'm not going to speak for everybody else and be like, well, that wasn't me. It was all hands on deck.
Yeah, it wasn't like, hey, your position coach is the only guy you have a relationship with.
It was all hands on deck.
And
they all came to the school, so everybody was involved. So you get a chance to build relationships with
whoever you click with, honestly, right?
Multiple different people.
Yeah.
And it's really the number one reason why I say I get being recruited by a particular guy and falling in love with a particular guy, but the reality of it is, if you want to function at a high level and Division I competitive football, it has to be about the university, your team, something much, much bigger than an individual relationship. And so one of the blessings in hindsight over the last, you know, however many hours, 96, is that it's a holistic approach to recruiting.
Sure. So it doesn't feel like the only person you knew is gone.
Yeah.
Right?
100%. Like, that is the real life, real time, practical application. And, even Lob was like, Caleb was like, we always talk about the University of Nebraska. We talk about the University of Nebraska. And I said, yeah, we're still at the University of Nebraska. Coach Roy loves the University of Nebraska, so we focus on the University of Nebraska. So it kind of it
filters its way down.
It just kind of veered the conversation.
So the reason I was asking about how Caleb took it was because I was curious, because there was something else that we talked about with Caleb a couple weeks ago, and I go, that sounds like Coach Rule. Like, that already sounds like he's channeling Coach Rule.
What did he say?
I don't remember, but I remember we were having this conversation about he had come home for something, and you were telling a story about one of his experiences on campus. I wish I could remember what the story was, but it just kind of came to me in real time here. I go, that sounds like Coach Rule's already rubbing off on him a little bit. And so the reason I asked kind of how he reacted was because the Coach Rule way to handle this is, okay, this is a dude that's been with him at every stop, right? This is not a passing relationship. This is not even like a Satterfield where he went and came back and was gone and whatever. Like, him and Coop have not spent really any time apart. And Coach Rule is a what's next guy, right? You talk about it when he's doing the team camps and he's like, hey, we got to figure it out. There's going to be, there's going to be 1,200 kids here or however many, whatever, right? Hey, we got to figure it out. There's going to be, or 1,200 coaches, right? Oh, we got to figure it out. And it was interesting to see how this all played out, right? Because this comes down late Friday, and then you've got, by Saturday, you've got a name that is not just really speculation. I mean, it's not official yet, but it wasn't like there was a handful of names. It was like, hey, it looks like it's going to be John Butler, right? And then there was almost a matter-of-factness to it, right? That's not to say that Coach Rule doesn't care. That's not to say that he isn't upset about his guy leaving, right? Or having to leave, however you want to put it. But what's next, right? That's the Coach Rule way of approaching these things, because what choice does he have? He can't just sit here and be upset about the fact that, oh, my guy's gone. He's got to hire a defensive backs coach, right? So that's why I was curious about Caleb.
You want to know, and I think I can say this and be okay. I hope so. The whole what's next thing. So one of the comments that was said is, hey, when this whole thing went down, I immediately thought to myself, and I mean immediately, DB, what do I have to do to get better? What's next? That's a quote. Super direct. It's not. That is verbatim. In the moment. Right? So, I mean, you talk about practicing what you preach, because the relationship is, I mean, that was
real.
That was his guy.
Yeah.
That was
every stop.
100% his guy.
And there is you brought up practicing what you preach. And I think, there's, and we can get into this later, there's a lot of like speculation as to why this happened, right? And, we can have a conversation about, does it matter why it happened? Do we deserve to know why it happened? He's a public employee, whatever, right? But I think there is something greater to practicing what you preach here, because Coach Rule expects his players to, and he treats his players in a way where it's like, hey, this is the standard, whatever it is, right? Across the board, this is the standard. And if we're not going to meet that standard, maybe this place isn't for you. Even if it was for you at one point, maybe it's not anymore. And what else is the other thing we talk about with Coach Rule? He's not going to ask you to do anything that he's not willing to do.
Right.
So if he's going to ask his players to take that self-inventory, and he's going to ask his coaches to take that self-inventory, then he's got to take that self-inventory too. And that, to me, is why this matters, right? What the actual reason, to me, doesn't really matter. What matters is, regardless of the reason, Coach Rule is keeping that standard as well.
Mhm.
Even though this is, I mean, let's be real here. Of the guys on staff, this would probably be the biggest test in terms of, am I really going to keep this standard? When it comes down to nuts and bolts time, am I really going to keep the standard that I expect everybody else to keep, or am I going to make exceptions? And he pretty clearly said, like, hey, there's no exceptions. That's not how you don't become excellent by making exceptions. That's what I took away from this situation. And as much as, like, man, we really like Coop, and there's some football concerns, there's some eval concerns about, like, what happens next, right?
Yeah, so that's the
that's the practical
that's
side.
the
There's
practical
a football side,
reality
right?
of it, right?
And we can get to that next. I don't want to try and squeeze it in a couple minutes here,
Because that's 100% a thing.
because that's real, right? Like, there is going to be a football, at least, learning curve,
And new set of eyes.
yeah,
A new eval style.
and maybe not new official terminology, but a new communication style,
Mhm.
right? No two people communicate the same way, even if you're sort of in the same neighborhood.
So I think heading into next break, this break, I think that's the thing, right? So there's two things at play. Number one is it's your belief in the leadership.
Mhm.
Okay, how much do we believe in the message? Like, what's our culture say that we can sustain
Mhm.
and withstand? Okay, so it's both. Like, where are we? How much water can we take on
And still stay afloat.
and still do what we do, right? Because
Mm.
you taking on some water a little bit.
Yeah.
So then you have to get into the remote versus near.
Mhm.
Am I going to be okay? Did I survive this thing? And it's still early, right? Because he's only at one meeting last night,
Mhm.
right? So it's his first time there. So there's that. But the other portion is so many, and Caleb and I talked about this. Everybody in that room, they only know one communicator and one communication style.
Mhm.
That's it. It's all they know. So they're going to have to be able to do something different.
Gonna learn on the fly a little bit here.
Yeah, and we're fortunate, right? Because he lost a great he had a great secondary coach retire. When Coach Frank had the back end, Coach Frank had the safeties.
Mhm.
I mean, you talk about, it's pretty good. Pretty good when your head coach is your position coach,
Mhm.
right? And one of the things that we talked about when Coach Queen came over the following year was the ability to receive instruction.
Mhm.
And that was the number one thing that he worried about.
Mhm.
Because at that particular time, it's all he knew.
Mhm.
And he felt like he had the best in the business. And his track record says he's
Probably right.
right? A great defensive mind. And going through the following year and then being hurt and being around Coach Queen and learning different communication styles and then coming back to have some success, it's like helps with, you know what? There's more than one way to skin a cat.
You can draw on past experience.
We can draw on past experience.
Yeah.
Because it was, there was like a 3 or 4 day stretch when Coach Frank retired when we didn't know what was going to happen. He was like, who's going to coach?
Yeah. No, it's fair.
I'm just
And that's
giving you real life,
and that's the practical side of these types of changes, which we will get into next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Good morning. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube from the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're talking about the departure of Coach Cooper from Nebraska staff and the expected hiring of John Butler to replace him over a, kind of a news dumpy weekend here.
Yeah, a lot going on.
And we talked a lot about kind of the mechanics of how it happened, but there is a practical side of that too, right? Like there is a football side of what we're talking about. And at a position group that you and I were both a little skeptical, I think is a fair word. A lot of options, not a lot of answers back there.
I wouldn't say skeptical. Not for me. I'm curious.
Okay, fair.
Right? Like it's not a negative thing. It's skeptical means I'm like, I don't know. I think for me is somebody's got to do something so somebody else doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this doesn't happen, I mean, and you could probably bottom line that as skeptical, but what I'm saying is I need somebody or two.
You need Jeremiah Charles or Sierra Wright or Bly Hill or somebody to step up and be a good corner so that Malcolm Hartzog doesn't have to move back to corner,
there's just a lot of things
so that you can kind of have a little bit of depth at that spot, because
Mhm.
there's a domino situation there.
That's the thing. That's what it is.
Defensive backfield.
Yep.
That if Malcolm Hartzog has to move back to corner,
And I think you have 3 experienced safeties.
then all of a sudden, if you have Malcolm Hartzog go back to corner, then you've got 2 experienced safeties, and then you've got.
I just think we were
an
the whole. I
inexperienced
thought the
starter.
whole time we were just downplaying the departure of Newsome, and assuming.
I mean, not just
and assuming Bly Hill, and we forgot about like Omar Brown and Phelan. And
so that's what I was going to say.
And I was just thinking, I'm like, guys,
Phelan and Omar Brown were really good last year.
Yes, they were.
Like, they were really good last year.
No question.
That's a guy that, and if you want to talk about the practicality of getting Gifford to play up to his measurables, that's what they were finally able to do with Sanford last year.
Mhm.
Phelan Sanford has incredible measurables. He was I don't know if you remember when Frost was publishing kind of those stats, those measurable stats, like the combine numbers. Phelan Sanford's at the top of almost every category. He was an incredible athlete, and they finally were able to unlock him a little bit. And so we've got a defensive back room that you're losing some experience at safety. You're losing one of your corners. And again, you've got some options. You've got some guys that you know can play, and then there's some depth questions in terms of experience. And aside from the position group, you could make an argument that Evan Cooper was the best talent evaluator on staff.
Yeah.
I think that's not a stretch to say. He was especially,
well, at least had a lot of for the amount of autonomy you had, you
have to assume, right? And
that's good deductive reasoning.
He found a lot of the guys that you would consider diamonds in the rough. He was pretty good at spotting those types of guys. And so there is a practical side of this where, okay, maybe John Butler is a really good. I mean, he's been in the NFL as defensive backs coach for the last decade.
Yeah, so I immediately went to just homework, right?
Yeah, just like where's this guy been? What's he been doing?
A couple guys, and I'm trying not to come across as a jerk because there's so many other things going on. I don't want to be all businessy.
No, we're trying to do your recon.
Yeah, but I feel so. I just say things, right? Part of it, I felt like, well, I'm okay. I mean, part of this is for my son.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how I kind of felt.
Like, yeah. You're like justifying it to yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how that probably is not real valid because it's like you said last night, and I quote, I'm going to be fine regardless. Okay.
Yeah, but you still care who's going to, right?
Like
so you still care who's going to be
like,
spending that much time with him.
I'm like, God, I'm just making up reasons to be on my phone, and I'm watching old interviews. I got a good buddy that DM'd me a couple of links from The Athletic that I was reading up on, because what I don't want to do, now I kind of did do it.
Okay.
It's like, hey, how'd the meeting go? But it was very loose. Like, I didn't drill him.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like the pedigree appears to be there.
Yeah, pretty good.
And I was messing with the Matrix analytics guys with Adam and Dave. Their ability to do recon and have data and just have stuff readily available and have perspective too, because they know what Nebraska did given the hire that they got was pretty hard to do. Right. And you can talk about whether he was available or why he was available, but to pull it off that quick.
This guy has been in the NFL for 10 years, the last 10 years.
Yeah.
He was at Penn State before that.
I mean, all things considered, and then all things considered, I think, and the better he is, potentially, the fewer questions you ask about the whys. You asked me about the whys earlier.
The less we care.
The less I care. And I don't really care anyway, to be honest. But that's never been my thing.
But if this, for whatever reason, if it goes the other way, if it goes poorly, we're going to ask a lot of questions about, like, well, why did Coop have to go? And what, because you want to go back and try and get something you can't go back and get.
We've had some guys with some unceremonious departures that we never really got answers.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
and not just as a fan base, but as people, we don't like that.
No.
We like to know why.
yeah. I mean,
And I mean,
we lost Carl Pelini. We lost Marvin Sanders. We lost Bill Moose. Like, there's, and you want your pound of flesh.
yeah, we feel like it's owed to us, I think.
But it just never.
And maybe it is. I mean, they are public employees. I don't know.
You know what? I
really don't know.
People say that. I just don't. I never land on that side of the coin.
I don't necessarily,
because I think ultimately I am cheering for people. So
no, I get
and
that.
I get it. Some you can rank varying degrees of whether we think somebody's good or bad, and I never get into ranking degrees of what people deserve or anything like that. Like, I don't use the term deserve, and you've heard me say this. Like, none of us actually receive what we truly deserve, right? Like, that's a very slippery slope, to be on that, to be that self-righteous. So I think for me, it's a couple of things. He obviously has tremendous command and knowledge. That part I know. I think he's exceptionally bright. Appears to be a good communicator. Like, his players like the way that he communicates. I think in the brief stint yesterday.
Talking about Butler.
Yeah. It's early. He's a good communicator. And somebody brought up a good point. I won't throw him under the bus, but in this day and age of multiple staff members and unlimited guys, I'll worry about the recruiting aspect of it in a couple months.
Sure. But we got real football to get to.
You got to do the real part first.
Yeah, you got to do the football part first.
To see how that goes. And I'll worry about, because you can get some help in that.
Because we're 7 weeks away from a game.
It's incredible.
6 weeks away from game week, right?
Yeah.
So we can worry about the recruiting stuff later.
And I just think that's how you have to. I just think that's why you have to do it.
Yeah, you got to tackle.
You've moved a couple guys over now into your recruiting department that have experience working with the secondary. Kind of did that behind the scenes. You've moved a few chess pieces. Like, he's just very quick thinkers.
Well, and let's not act like a lot of people weren't enamored with his hiring process when he got hired.
Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah.
And now everybody's cool.
Yeah, right.
Everybody's good.
Yeah, we were a little.
So
the buddy. How many times do you hear the buddy hires?
I heard buddy hires, and he's got this much of a budget. Doesn't really seem like he's spending it.
Yeah,
like, why aren't we getting any big names? And why aren't we getting anybody established? And all this stuff, right? And so it's like, why is he holding on to Donnie and whatever, right? There's a lot. Man, why didn't he keep Bill Bush and all this stuff, right? And what? 6 months later, we're like, oh man, great hires.
Yeah.
Great hire. And so I bring that up to say there is a little bit of a benefit of a doubt that's been earned. And not just at Nebraska. Look at his whole career in terms of hiring guys. Oh, Garrett McGuire, he's a little baby, like whatever, right? There's been a little bit of a benefit of doubt that's been earned in his hiring practices where I feel like we at least have to be like, you almost have to err on the side of it's going to be okay.
Yeah, probably going to work out. Especially when you have a guy that, like, when something happens that he doesn't plan for, his first thought is not, woe is me. It's, how do I get better?
It's what's next. And he lands on a guy that's been in the NFL for the last 10 years doing this exact same thing. You could definitely do worse. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We are back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, wrapping up hour number one. We're on AM 590, ESPN Radio, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. Let's set up the show real quick since we're almost a third of the way through it. Coming up
we're consistent.
Coming up at 8 o'clock, we'll talk to Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald.
Are you guys going?
And then at 9, we will talk to Jesse Rogers. He covers baseball for ESPN. Just had some all-star teams announced and all that good stuff. And my Red Sox are actually playing decent baseball.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to be back on the hype train.
I'm not on the hype train yet, but it's more pleasant to watch than it has been for a while, so that's all right.
It's not a bad baseball team, man. You should get on board.
They're coming around a little bit.
Yeah. Now, I still think the two best teams in the American League are the two teams above them.
Yeah, which is a bummer.
But
it's a tough hang.
I mean, you keep playing like that against the Yankees, you'll be all right.
Yeah. And they're hot.
Baltimore's pretty good, though.
Yeah.
Baltimore's pretty good.
They are, and they kind of sleptwalk.
Yeah, for like first.
Remember when they
months?
were 20? They were 27 and 14, and I was like, I don't know. It seems like Baltimore just kind of putzing along.
Meanwhile, 27-14, pretty good.
I think that's what the record was, if I remember
and
right.
we're like, have they turned it on yet?
Yeah.
And we're like,
it's like it seems like, they win 3, they lose 1, they win 3, they lose. I was like, I'm waiting for a run here. So,
yeah. Winning 3 and losing 1 will get you a pretty long way, though.
Yeah, isn't it weird how I said that? But a lot of times you'll see some of these teams they'll go
they'll
like,
rip off like 9 in a row.
Yeah.
No, or they'll win like 12 out of 14.
Yeah.
I get it. I get what you meant.
It just seemed like they were just kind of moseying on along. But as they get healthy, yeah, they're pretty good.
Well,
and and you got to get Philly's got to get healthy. I mean, they'll be a good contender. They're kind of putzing along in their last 10.
Yeah.
Dodgers definitely got to get healthy. The team, I mean, the team that you have to step back and be like, what the?
Mm-hmm.
It's Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you haven't had your closer. You lost your 2 frontline guys. Like what the Brewers are doing is incredible.
I don't even recognize what we're doing.
No, it's incredible.
It is, yeah.
Well, and who was that I asked? Was it Schaefer Bruns? It was one of our baseball split guys.
Yeah.
It's like, who's the team that made the playoffs last year that you're thinking,
regression?
Yeah. It should have for sure been the Brewers.
Yeah.
Your Major League Baseball.
Now, you could have talked me into the Diamondbacks because they don't have the depth, but when they're healthy, they're pretty good.
Yeah. And they were young, so I was like, they'll get a little better. And yeah.
Yeah.
No, Milwaukee is cruising.
And don't look now, but you see who's still atop the West, even though the Astros acted like they were the Astros now.
Seattle.
Yeah.
Your guys.
Yep. So keep that up. Glad I was a year late on that.
Big
no big deal. Early, I should say.
Big J-Rod guy.
Yeah.
So speaking of kind of moseying along yesterday, I'm just minding my own business, and then I think people were maybe a little bit of high alert after the Cooper thing and that coming out of nowhere. And I don't know where this originated or why it was discovered, but I think I saw it first from our guy in the afternoon, Elijah Herbal, who hosts our afternoon show on Hail Varsity Radio with Chris Schmidt. But he brought it to my attention that Terrence Knighton had changed his Twitter bio and removed all references to Nebraska, whatever. And usually that's not a great sign. And so there were a few hours yesterday, and I send you a text. I'm like, hey, something going on with Knighton too? I don't know what happened exactly, but it appears to have not been anything.
Yeah, I do, but it's not everybody else's business because it was not anything. It wasn't him. And I'll leave it at that. But the other thing is, so I'm in Plattsmouth.
Yeah.
All right. And so I don't know anything. I'm like, I mean.
So my text to you was very confusing.
We're trying to get to a set.
Yeah.
Set up. I'm like, but there were probably 30 texts and multiple DMs.
Mm-hmm.
So the only one, I think I only responded because the service was super sketchy, and I didn't know what everybody was talking about. But like at 1:58, I sent a DM. I told a guy he's fine, and then this didn't go through until 4:04. The other guy said, "You guys are wild." Like that was my response.
Yeah.
But I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's usually not a great sign.
No.
If something like that happens.
Yeah.
Like if somebody scrubs something from a social media platform, usually something's going on.
I totally. It's not like I'm like.
Listen. I get as Nebraska fans, Nebraska media. A lot of times we make something out of nothing. I get it.
But we are kind of. I won't say connected, but. I do think one of the good things. I'm not gonna hands. I know, and I told my buddy he's wild, but
yeah,
it's primarily because he DMs a lot of funny stuff. But I'm not gonna hand slap the fan base over that because I understand it, and I wouldn't do that to the media either.
Yeah.
Now, if the media was like in an uproar but nobody from these aren't things that came from anybody in the media that wasn't my friend, right? Like if we're friends, like you're probably going to ask me, but I don't. I think one of the beauties of being here is, and this is important, because Coach Rule and I talk about this all the time. And I've talked about this before Coach Rule got here. I think one of the beauties of being here is a passionate fan base.
Yeah, people care
People care,
a
right?
lot.
They know your quality control guy. Like they want to know your nutritionist. They want to know your team psychologist. They want to know your strength and conditioning staff.
Mhm.
They probably know more about your family when you get here as an assistant coach than you might.
Yeah.
Right? They're made accessible. It's just kind of how it goes here. We talk to coordinators, we talk to position coaches. So
We talk to support staff.
So I think that's so people being in the know and taking information and being concerned. I mean, it's fine. Like I wasn't like
That's part of it, though, right? Like you don't get one
I'm
without the
yeah.
other.
It's
Like,
what's
what you're saying. You don't get this life without me in it, right? Like you don't get the
To
passion.
quote Mr. Rizek.
You don't get the passion. You don't get the support. You don't get the resources. You don't
Yeah.
get all that without.
So I'm not.
Hey, my D-line coach just scrubbed us from his Twitter
Yeah,
bio.
I didn't eye roll over that.
What's happening here, right?
I did not eye roll.
And kind of where I was going with that is like sometimes we do make something out of nothing. That may not have been something, but it wasn't nothing either. Like if that happens, that's often a sign that something's happening.
Yeah, and I think on the heels of Coach Coop and those guys being close,
context there, right? Context matters there,
yeah,
right?
Like they're boys.
Like yes, and so that happens Friday. 48 hours later, we see Coach Knighton has scrubbed his Twitter profile. Like it's not crazy to be like, what's happening?
I've lived here,
especially, and that's where not knowing the why sometimes impacts, right? Don't know if it matters, but it does impact when we don't know the why of why Cooper's gone.
Yeah,
then it leads to speculation on what's happening.
I understand. I get that, and you can't. We have enough ambulance chasers around here. Like we don't need any more.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, and I say this, I've said this all the time when I was looking for like the perfect coach or the perfect AD or like how I would draw it up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this doesn't make it right, but I always talked about a handful, a couple things, right? Didn't want it to be your best job. I wanted you to be a grinder.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to endure. You have to be secure, because I know I've seen, right? I saw what it did to Coach Osborne.
Mm-hmm.
I saw what it did to Coach Solich. I saw what it did to Coach Callahan. I saw what it did to Coach Pelini. I saw what it did to Coach Riley.
Mm-hmm.
Saw what it did to Coach Frost. So after 28 years, I get to say, oh, I like, you need this character, this character, this character. You need that character. You got to.
Yeah, we've got a lot of data points at this point.
A ton.
Yeah.
So, and this goes with whether you're an assistant coach or whatever, a head coach or on the support staff. It comes with a lot of stuff,
mm-hmm.
perks. Some call it like an infatuation. Like there's this reverence. And you have to be built a certain way,
mm-hmm.
or around enough people where your culture can bring you back in. Because when you get turned over to yourself and you just get to make your own decisions and there is no checks and balances, like, I mean, humans do as humans do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not.
Because most people...
It is. I won't go as far as to say it's unique, like it's only, but it is unique in the proximity and the level of comfort people have in having conversations with you
mm-hmm.
and about you as though they know you.
Mm-hmm. There's very
because
few
you
barriers.
Are so
mm-hmm.
because you are so accessible.
Yeah.
So you have to be built a certain way, and I told you one of the greatest lines that Coach Rule ever told me was like 3 weeks into this. He's like, you know what? One of my greatest jobs will be to let people know this is not Disneyland.
Yeah.
It's easy to get it confused.
Get caught up in the trappings, right?
It's why he grinds.
It can be really nice to be the head coach or the starting quarterback or whatever at the University of Nebraska.
So I don't knock the fans for. I mean, I'm like, what the? What's he doing? We off of death row?
We've got Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, and we're brought to you by Team Jack Foundation. TeamJackFoundation.org is the place to go to check out all of the ways you can get involved. You can donate right there on the page. The events are available for you to check out, see what's coming up next, and you can figure out how to get involved if you want to volunteer as well. Not to mention, you can see all the projects that Team Jack Foundation is involved with in trying to find better treatments for childhood brain cancer and one day a cure. That's teamjackfoundation.org. Sam McKewon will be joining us here in just a minute as we continue talking about a busy July weekend, which is not something you often hear in college football, but Nebraska's never boring.
No. No. I got them all confused, man. Like I said, I came out to a whatever, but it was like, we just can't have nice. I got a lot of we can't have nice things.
Yeah,
that seemed to be the reoccurring theme.
That was definitely the vibe on the internet.
And for sure. I get it. But I don't know. I kind of stand by, and it's just a personal thing for me. I just believe that I'm not going to hand slap or point fingers or laugh at or make fun of guys or gals that it's easy to go back and say, oh, all you did was change your Twitter profile. I'm sorry. Like, whatever. You can be flippant about it. Yeah. But real, like, I could see real time where.
And history tells us that that's often a thing.
Yeah.
Like in today's day and age.
I just don't. Like, you're not going to get me to say, even though I think I have a decent idea of what happened, I'm not going to say, oh man,
you guys are so silly.
Yeah. I'm not doing that.
Because there's too much history of it being something.
Yeah.
Right. And in the context of what had just happened a couple days earlier, and the context of the relationship between Knighton and Cooper.
Yeah, and he's a stud. And he's a stud. Like, let's not act like he wasn't the guy that everybody felt like everybody would come get.
Well, like, this is
so it's like I don't think people were meaning to be divisive or destructive or in an uproar.
No.
I just think sometimes you just have to be able to say, you know what, like, you get that when you get that being here.
Yes, you get the good and you get the not always good, right? I don't even want to call it bad.
And I don't even think it comes from a malicious place. It's just we're
concerned.
Yeah,
I think
Sam's here.
I think people were genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
We'll bring on Sam McKewon now on the Hurrdat Hotline from Omaha World-Herald. What's up, Sam?
Guys,
Sam,
welcome to the month, the July, the quiet month, not quiet month, after the 4th, all the rest.
But we just get bored because it was a dead period, or what? Like, did we need something to talk about?
Yeah, I know. And it's yeah. I mean, hopefully it'll be a couple quiet weeks for the program now.
Sam, let me ask you something. I want to go back to the Cooper Butler thing in a second, because you're one of the few that I was actually talking to real time. I had pretty much shut it down, but I'll get back to that in a second. But my stance on the Coach Knighton thing is I didn't want to hand slap or poke fun or laugh at Nebraska fans for being concerned, because I'm trying to make the case that I think with the availability and how much we kind of care and know about these guys and the support staff and just the accessibility, that you kind of get that with being at Nebraska, right? As my buddy DJ Rezak likes to say, you don't get this life without him in it. So this kind of goes with the territory, right? I didn't look at it like, oh, here we go again. I was like, I get it, right? I mean, a premier coach, for whatever the reason, has a different bio handle. I could see where that I could see where that would be concerning on the heels of Coach Cooper.
Yeah, I mean,
how did it land with you? Did you eye roll? Were you like, oh, that's interesting?
I eye rolled it. Yeah,
you're smarter than me.
I think that. Yeah, well, I'm not. Like, it's just that. I think I don't know how to put this. Like, obviously, the timing of Cooper's resignation and 12 hours later a name coming out indicates that was not, Matt Rule wasn't calling people at 7 o'clock on Friday night asking if they want to coach Nebraska.
Right.
So, it would have been kind of odd for a coach right on the heels of that to be doing some, a different coach to be leaving for the same thing. But, I don't know. Like, it's one of those things where I feel like I'm actually on Twitter a relative bit more than some, and probably more than I should be sometimes. And I don't necessarily think a lot of that. I think, people change their Twitter bios sometimes or their photos. I don't change mine much, but people do that sometimes. And players do that. Players do that because they're, impulsive or they're upset. I didn't unite in that way, but, Nebraska fans have become accustomed to drama. If you want to get right down to it.
Yeah.
Drama has been around this program for really a long time, at least since Bo got there, and frankly before that. And this is a program that can at times struggle to get out of its own way. And Rule has tried very hard to create a program that's steadier than that, and is. But the fan base is what it is. There's people that are just sitting on social media all day long, looking for stuff, watching stuff, speculating about stuff, all kinds of different things. And, they may know, some of these folks may know more than some of the people in Nebraska know, because they just spend all day long on it. And that's the nature of social media. That's why you have to be judicious and thoughtful about it. And, even with the Butler thing, and I think he's going to be the coach, we weren't going to say that they've hired him, because they've hired him when they announced the hire. We've went through this once before where they thought they were going to hire that quarterback coach, and then they didn't hire him. And, so you got to be thoughtful.
Are you talking about Dana Holgerson?
Jake Peets.
Or Peets?
Peets, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think the Holgerson thing was always a tire kicking, mostly. But no, I mean, Peets, that was basically announced. He's going to join Nebraska as a quarterback coach, and they didn't do it. And you got to be smart with. Hey, and ESPN reported it. That's what we're saying. And Nebraska will announce it when they announce it. If that's who it is, we'll go from there. But there's all kinds of permutations today, and you have to be thoughtful about them. I'm not saying it's not possible that Nebraska, could in theory lose two coaches in an offseason. I don't think that's going to happen this offseason, but that can happen, and you just have to roll with it. As a fan base, turnover in college sports is going to be super common. It's already common with players. It's going to be super common with coaches too.
Sam, kind of going back to the Butler and Cooper thing, I want to talk about the football part of it first and foremost, because it's a position group where I think, maybe skepticism is too strong of a word, but there's some curiosity as to what that's going to look like in the defensive backfield. There's obviously the recruiting prowess and talent evaluation that Cooper brought to the table as well. Just from a football standpoint, how do you process the loss of Cooper and the assumed hiring of John Butler?
Well, I mean, I think Cooper was close to Rule and had a lot to say about talent evaluation. I think he was a skilled recruiter, and so I think there were ways in which he'll be missed there. And obviously, one player already pushed back his decision making timeline, and so there's a number of things at play. That obviously, I mean, Matt Rule didn't have Evan Cooper on his staff for no reason. I mean, and didn't pay him when he paid him for no reason. It helped keep Cooper away from coordinator jobs, because that's a pretty hefty salary. So obviously he was an important piece. Butler is a very, very high level defensive backs coach.
Yeah,
and that goes without saying. So that you don't coach that long in the NFL and that many good players, and not have a reputation. So he has a very strong reputation. And Nebraska's individual players will benefit from his expertise and knowledge. Like, it will be, well, let me tell you what Micah Hyde does. He can inform them about the habits, about the playing style, and those things. It's pretty obvious he wants to be a defensive coordinator and wants to be the play caller. And more to the point, I think it's pretty obvious he was offended by And he didn't say that in the athletic story, but I mean, I've been around it long enough to know that if your boss promotes a guy that hadn't been there as long and is 11 years younger than you to the coordinator role, he's saying something about you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying something that, based on that athletic story, his position players did not agree with.
Yeah, I always like to see when players come out, like, because that usually tells me what I need to know, for the most part.
Yeah.
So
there's some drama within the Buffalo Bills organization. It's not that anybody gives a crap about this stuff, but over the course of 2 years, that franchise has not lived up to what everybody thought it was going to be when they lost to Patrick Mahomes 42-36. Everybody thought it was going to be Super Bowl or bust in Orchard Park, and they basically overturned the entire coaching staff. The next person to go is going to be the head coach. So he's trying to do everything he can do while Josh Allen's optimum window is open to get them to a Super Bowl, and he made a choice to promote a 40-year-old defensive coordinator over Butler. And I think that was when Butler's like, well, I got to go. And then the other guy, the defensive line coach, he left too and went and got a coordinator job himself. So I obviously there's things going on in Buffalo. His departure from the Bills was his. I mean, he initiated that. They probably would have loved to have kept him. So he's unemployed by choice, and he'd be an interesting hire for Nebraska for sure.
So you kind of alluded to it, and I think a lot of people have put two and two together. You obviously don't make a hire like this on a whim, right?
Right.
A little bit of it's kind of amazing how they pulled this off this time of the year with little to no one knowing, right? I mean, that one thing that I think that department has done is they seem to have kind of tightened it up quite a bit with the comings and certainly the goings.
For sure. I think that had begun under Trev, and I think that's continued. And Rule has, I think Rule has made it's a quiet part of the season too, and so there's a lot of people that probably aren't quite as plugged in or tuned in. But just as an example, Damon, about 36 hours before Bill Moose was let go, back in June of 21, and that was June 30th, July 1st, whatever. We started hearing this guy's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Now he was a person of higher stature than Cooper, but that those leaks were starting to come out about 36 hours, 24 hours before he left, or was before he was talking to us about leaving or whatever you want to call what he did. He was fired, but so Nebraska's gotten tighter since then, and for sure, yeah, they did a nice job of keeping it under wraps until Friday night at 6 p.m., which is in the news world. Excuse me, thought I had to sneeze. In the news world, that's when you dump news, as they call it. It's a Friday news dump, and so they were able to keep that till Friday. And Pete Thamel's going to report a lot of stuff that comes out of Rule World. So that was they handled it well, and it's too bad. Again, I like Devin Cooper. So enjoyed listening to him. I think he loves being a teacher, and hopefully he's able to find another role somewhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting because that, as far as I could gather, that's the only voice that defensive backs room has had. They had a lot of his temperament, right? He's obviously rubbed off on his guys. In listening to some of Butler's pressers and even reading the article in The Athletic, it appears like one of his strong. I kept seeing the word fiery or hearing the word passionate, so that's good. Like, I like that. But the other thing is, he's extremely bright. Like, his ability to communicate is at a high level.
Yeah, I think probably what has kept Butler from being a coordinator, if I had to guess, would just be the volatility. Like, he's got a position coach's heart, and the NFL embracing sort of a cool remove from the head coach and play caller perspective. They want somebody who's more analytical, kind of stands a half step back. They're not necessarily looking for the people that always wear it on their sleeves. You can just look at the head coaches in the NFL and see that, and they're fiery to some degree. But I think of the Browns head coach or the Vikings head coach. Those guys were coordinators for the team head coaches. So, I think he's going to be a really, really interesting hire. And I don't want to jump the queue too much and say, well, once Tony White leaves, this guy's going to move into that role. I have no idea. And honestly, that is a conversation for a different time. I think Tony White's got year 2 coming up, and he needs to find the best job for him. As a head coach when that comes along, and that may not be this offseason either. We just don't know. Tony White's the defensive coordinator of the team, and there's probably some things that Butler can learn from him. There's probably some things he can learn from Butler. Should be a good match, and he is the most experienced coach. Yeah, he's the most experienced coach on that side, for sure. Like he'll come in there and he'll be able to talk about NFL defenses over the last decade, and that will be a helpful conversation for everybody in the room.
Sam, pro or con that we're 6.5 weeks out, right? Because sometimes you have to hunker down, and it can enhance learning. Some other times it's, we got too much time. We got time, so we can kind of incrementally do this thing. Do you like? You're obviously not going to pick this time of the season, but can you make a positive out of it?
You can do the very best you can to make the transition smooth, and to I think the biggest positive that can be made here is the guy that you had did a great job of setting a culture. I don't have to come in here and teach you how to work or how to think or how to act. What I can do is I can tell you what the pros do, and I can tell you that from a 10-year look back. So he can go to Tommy Hill and say, here's the corner I coached. He was a Pro Bowler. He was an All-Pro, actually. Here's what he did. His safeties have been really good. And so those two guys have been there for basically the entire time he was there. He can go to an Isaac Gifford or Marquise Buford and say, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poirier are not the off-the-charts freaks athletically. Although Poirier's pretty good. Here's what they do. Here's how they made it work for them at this level. And here's some point. Like he can improve. He can share some knowledge that even Cooper would not have necessarily had about just the last decade of football at the pro level. The receiver, he's able to say, I sat in practice for the last however many years it was, 3 years, and I watched Stephon Diggs work. And here's what he did, and here's what we did against him. And here's how teams tried to take him away. And here's how we tried to take away Justin Jefferson, even though that did not work 2 years ago. Justin Jefferson caught all kinds of balls over the Bills a couple of years ago. But here's what we tried to do to stop it. So they can talk about those things and have honest conversations. Hey, when we play Ohio State, I've faced this guy. Here's what we can try to do. Those kind of things. I think it's positive in that way. It's going to be tough in other ways, I'm sure.
We're talking with Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, I was trying to remember, do you recall another position or coaching staff change at this point in the calendar? It is pretty unusual.
Well, Bob Wager last year.
Yeah,
right,
I guess
after.
We hadn't ever seen him coach, so I forgot about him. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Bob, and I think his was after Big Ten Media Days. Let me try to think here. Gosh, I couldn't speak with any intelligence to the Callahan era. Sorry.
That's okay.
I don't think there was a ton of off-season shift there. No, not that I'm aware of, and I'm sure somebody will bring someone up very quickly. That we had the summer change with men's basketball back with Collier left and Doc took over. Doc did an incredible job that first year, but that's different, obviously. In men's basketball, Rashawn Burno, they called it the Burno effect at the time. He left right around this time. I remember because I had to cover it because Lee B was on vacation at the time. And I was about to go on vacation, and Rashawn Burno left for Arizona State. And, I think that might have been the first time I talked to Miles, or one of the first times. It was good. So Rashawn Burno did that to Nebraska, and they hired, what was his name? Bill Beckner?
Oh, yeah, that might have been it.
Yeah,
that might have been it.
He was he's the personal trainer of the Portland Trailblazers star. Now he's in Milwaukee. I don't know. I'm a Blazers fan, but the name's blanking me at the moment. So he was a odd hire. This is a much better hire than that particular guy was. I think he went on to be an assistant at Boise State. Those are the two that I can recall. And then Wager, who resigned and then was replaced. And now, this rule has come down with the unlimited coaches. So I'm guessing that, the tight ends coach who stuck around will probably have some sort of title now. And he'll be the assistant to Satterfield, who can kind of focus on calling plays. I assume Butler will have an assistant too. I don't know. But if he's going to coach all four positions, that's a big undertaking, coaching all four. So I'm sure he'll have some help there with whichever position he wants to get help with.
Sam, when you're taking a look at kind of
Damian Lillard, that's who Beckner was the personal trainer of.
Lillard?
Damian Lillard. Yeah.
Oh, good call.
The guy that replaced Burno.
Oh, shoot, we're down to a minute, so I won't get super philosophical. But when you're taking a look at the totality of the fit of Nebraska on the defensive side of the ball, do you like kind of at least at the surface, replacing passion for passion?
Yes, I do, very much. Yeah, I think that's good. I think you have to have some of that on your staff, and absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah. The one thing that I think I told you this too is like Matt Rule can go get really good coaches. Like his network is very vast.
Yeah,
people want to work with him. He will be able to replace coaches whether he wants to promote from within or he wants to go out and get a name. He'll be able to do that every single time. Now, he is a very specific kind of guy too. So like, just like Joe Brady's a hell of a coach. That situation didn't necessarily always match.
Yeah,
I think Rule with this guy's went out and got somebody who's going to fit. It presuming he's the guy that fits who Rule is and kind of does things the way Rule wants it done. And Matt Rule will always be able to go out and get really good coaches. And that wasn't always true of every coach Nebraska had. I don't know if it was true of Scott. Like, I don't, it was hard to say. Like, when
that's fair. That's fair.
When they did a hiring of offensive coordinators, it was a audition. It wasn't an audition. But Scott was talking to people he didn't really know that well.
Mm-hmm.
And Trev was involved. And so, like, I just don't think that's ever going to be Matt's story. Let's say, for example, so-and-so and such goes on and gets a coordinator job. Whomever that is. I don't know. Rob Dvorak's probably not going to be there forever. He's a hell of a coach. From everything I've heard, Matt's not going to have to go over to Troy Dan and go, who do you know? What do you think? So Rule will always have options. And that's part of the thing that you get when you hire Matt Rule is you hire all these other things, including that people want to work with him. And as it turns out, sometimes when you hire coaches, you don't always know what you're hiring. And you're hiring the Cadillac package as it relates to the man can hire who he wants. And it appears that he went out and got a really, really good hire here. I mean, this is the best possible example of he can hire who he wants.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Good stuff there with Sam McKewon. He brought up an interesting point about Coach Rule in this situation, and that was his ability to go out and find coaches.
Yep.
Right? I kind of talked about it a little bit in the first segment about, kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt. But Sam got into it kind of from a different angle about his just network and his ability and his relationships. And, it probably hasn't been since Callahan that you've had a coach with this much of a Rolodex, because it kind of felt like Callahan could put together a pretty good staff. Now, we can argue whether or not his decision on who to hire was good, but it felt like he knew a ton of people and could go get good, like guys with good reputations, right? Whether it's John Blake or whichever Norvell it was, Jay, I think, like he was able to go out and get good guys. But we're probably talking 17, 18 years since Nebraska's had a coach where you're like, oh yeah, he can go get dudes.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, don't undersell Coach White either, right? Because he's highly respected in the industry. He's pretty smart. He's a very good communicator. So, like, if you sit down and you talk to him, I would imagine he was as heavily involved in the interviewing process as Coach Rule, because it's hard. Rule can talk. Coach Rule, can talk probably big picture, the philosophy of the program, what he's looking for as a person. Coach White would be the one that knows
like nitty gritty of the actual
the
defense.
ins and outs of what he needs as a DB coach.
So I've always kind of wondered that in these.
So you have to be able to trust, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine a head coach saying, "Hey, I know this is what you do. I want to empower you to be involved in the process." Because I would imagine kind of had to go down that way, right? Because who's teaching Coach Butler the terminology and what they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be
It's going to be Coach
Yeah.
White.
It's going to be White, yeah.
Right? So
I've always wondered that in these situations, and it probably varies by staff, but you probably know better than I do. Like, how much is it head coach? How much is it coordinator when you're talking about position coaches?
It's hard to say. I mean,
because what you're saying makes sense, right? Like, yeah, it's going to be nitty gritty.
And remember, Coach Rule just learned the defense last year.
Yeah.
So
because he'd never worked with Tony before, hadn't run this defense before.
It's brand spanking new.
Yeah.
And
so maybe he leans more on him in this situation than he would in others.
Yeah, and I also think, just knowing a little bit about Coach Rule's personality, if he's hired you to do a job, he's going to empower you to execute it. Now he's going to hold you accountable. You know, it ain't just some free for all.
Yeah.
But I think he would feel like Coach Wright, he ought to have some say so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I just don't
because he probably
it just doesn't seem like we talked enough about that.
Coach White probably knows better in that situation what is necessary than Coach Rule does.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. And I think Coach Rule can, and maybe they both know. It wouldn't strike me as if they both operate under the same parameters or guidelines of what kind of they're looking for. Okay, these are the character traits we want this person to have. This. It wouldn't surprise me, like, if they were both on the same page.
Yeah.
Right. Or, Coach Rule could say, all right, these are the parameters. What do you think? Or, you know what I mean?
Do you think it matters at all? Because this is more of a short-term view, but do you think it matters at all the types of guys that are already in the room as to who you bring in and coach them?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Probably not.
Because on the one hand, you probably don't want to think that short term.
That's a really good question.
But on the other hand, you're 6 weeks away from the season, and you need that group to be good.
Yeah. I think you start with the adult in the room.
Okay.
And everybody else will get along. Because my guess is, when I hear that question out loud, I'm thinking Coach Rule and that support staff and the rest of the staff are thinking those young men are going to behave a certain way anyway. Like, this is what the culture dictates. This is how we treat adults. This is how we receive instruction. Now, those smaller culture groups can have their own personality, but I think the way that they do business is relatively the same. I think you start. I don't think you can say, hey, he can coach this guy. Now, I do think you have to be cognizant of, if your horses can mesh.
Yeah. Well, right, because they're like, hey, you mentioned they've really only heard the one voice with Coach Cooper. And so, does it matter? It's like, hey, we probably need to get somebody a little similar to how he communicates so that the transition is less. Because, like, it'd be one thing to go from, going from a guy that's, really straightforward and, like, kind of gets in your face and it's pretty loud and get after you a little bit. And then you go to, like, a super soft-spoken guy that might, even if they're both great coaches, like, that may cause some issues just in the transition that maybe you're not trying to deal with right now.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, I just think, Denny said this earlier, and I thought it was a pretty good point. He says, I think Rule's approach to all people and hires is relatively the same, whether it be recruits or staff. Next man up is just deeper. You can't call the next man up if you don't think about or who the next on board is at all times. So, like, I think we say that, but you have to train in such a way where time doesn't matter. Sometimes that means outlasting people. Sometimes that means you got to be ready right now. I always say that to our guys. Like, when I say train in a way that time doesn't matter, like, that's
part of what you're talking about is timing.
Correct.
Right? Like, it doesn't matter if Coach Coop leaves in March or if he leaves in July.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if he leaves in July or if he leaves in November. Like, you got to be ready for it.
And I just think and if he's for Coach White, which I know that he is, I mean, that's part of the growing process. Right? Hey, you're going to have to do this someday.
You'll be head coach. This is part of it.
You know what I mean? Like,
let's figure it out.
I could I just think
We've
and in return,
Mhm.
when somebody feels like they have some skin in the game and they're
They have
personally
ownership, yeah.
they've got ownership of it.
Mhm.
You know, so I think that's when the beauty can happen. I definitely think probably should talk more about Coach White's role in that process, because it, to the naked eye, it seems seamless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, the dump happens Friday. Reports are circulating by Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday morning, pretty early too. So,
Right.
you know, that leads you to believe this had been in the works for some time.
Yeah.
But, you know, and that's, you know, I just find, not that we need to know, but I find the mechanics of these things interesting too. You know, just, okay, I wonder when they knew about Cooper. I wonder when they started talking to people, but that's just my curiosity, right?
Well, DJ said something in the stream I think is pretty well
What's
said.
that?
He said integrity and character and accountability matter. So does privacy. A balanced approach is totally doable.
Mhm.
Like I kind of like that. You know,
I think that's
I'm
fair.
like I think that's more than it's more than fair. I think it's right.
Yeah.
Right, because sometimes those aren't always
Well, yeah.
fair and right aren't always the same thing. But I agree with that.
I will. I mean, and this isn't my default. I will hear the argument though of like public employees. Like I'll hear the argument. I get it. I get why people make that argument. Now, again, is it they just want their pound of flesh? Does it matter? Whatever. Like that type of stuff, you know, and there probably is a finer line in there too where it's, hey, this is a legal matter. We probably have to disclose this versus this is a personnel matter where we don't have to disclose it. You know, there's probably some nuance in that as well.
Well, there's lots of things and reasons. I mean, pick a sport on campus that coaches have left, and we don't know.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we care more about this one because it's the highest profile. So, like, you know, there's a double standard there into when we care and when we don't care.
That's the word.
Which is totally
it's a total double standard.
Yeah, which I totally understand. But there's also, I mean, I'll hear the argument. I really will, because these are some of the highest paid employees of the state at any given time. And so I don't necessarily think we need to know, but
yeah, I just take the stance. It's not my business.
Yeah. But
even though it, in a way, even though it does impact me directly.
I would say it impacts you more directly than it impacts most people. But also, I think the argument people make is when they're a public employee, it becomes everybody's business.
Yeah. And I'm also, you know, I trust his judgment. If he doesn't care, then I don't care.
Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. There was some other Nebraska news this weekend.
Kind of.
Nebraska.
Wait, what was it?
Related news.
Oh.
Non-coaching related.
Football?
Fairly high-profile recruit that had been on campus. Nebraska made the Final Four for David Sanders Jr., and he'll be committing August 17th, a recruitment that many said Nebraska was no longer part of.
Yeah, I know.
That does not appear to be the case.
Yeah, and listen, in typical Nebraska fan fashion, we're not going to get him, and we're the 4th out of 4, and I heard it all, but the way that I look at it is to be here is incredible.
Progress.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Because I was right about one, I was dead wrong about the other. I said, who did I tell you I thought it could come down to? I know everybody laughed. I keep receipts. I have all my DMs.
Tennessee?
Nope.
I thought you brought up Tennessee.
The other orange school.
Texas?
I said I thought it would come down to Nebraska and Clemson.
Oh, Clemson. That's right.
So to see that Clemson didn't make the Final Four, I was shocked. I was like, blew that one. But I also did think Nebraska was never out of it.
Yeah.
Like never out of it. And don't, I'm telling you, man, if they can get him back, they got a weekend on the 27th of July. Elite recruiting weekend. If they can get him back,
all bets are off.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's just the way that I feel in my heart of hearts.
Yeah.
Right. Like, again, I'd rather be right than well liked, but so I'm going to tell you what I think, but I'm more surprised that Clemson is out of it
than
Nebraska being in it.
So let's talk about the,
and I mean that.
let's talk about
I mean, clearly it's for everybody to hear.
Making the final cuts for guys like this, because I know there was a lot of, like SJ commits to Miami, which we thought that was going to happen. Utu commits elsewhere. Like you get, you've had some high profile misses in the last month or so, and people start wringing their hands and they get, all pearl clutchy and all these types of things about it, right? But there is a process to how these things work, right? Nebraska is still late on all of these guys.
Yep.
Right? They just got here not even 2 years ago, a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and what did DJ say about Georgia?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Searles has been recruiting him since he was at North Carolina.
Yeah.
So they go way back.
Yeah, and so Nebraska is,
they
a couple years late on all these guys.
Yeah.
So they're playing catch up, and this is how it goes when you're not currently recruiting at this level, right? I saw this happen. I know Nebraska fans are going to hate this, but I saw this happen with Creighton, right? As they were transitioning from Missouri Valley to Big East, they first weren't in the conversation at all for most top 100 guys. They just weren't there, right? And then they would get in the conversation with guys, and they'd lose out to, on top 50, top 100 guys to Kansas or to Villanova or wherever, right? And then they broke through with the Tyshawn Alexander, Mitch Ballot class, right? Then Marcus Zagorowski, and then you get your Ryan Nemhard, Arthur Kaluma, and Trey Alexander. There is a progression of how this works. It's not like you just flip a switch one day and all of a sudden you're getting higher level recruits. There is groundwork that has to be laid. You have to be able to put the work in, and then you have to be able to show proof of concept.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the part. Those are the two things that Nebraska's waiting on. So when you say it's incredible that they're in this position for David Sanders, I believe you.
Yeah, I'm not just,
because they haven't done either of those things yet. They haven't been able to put in the groundwork. They were late to the party, and they haven't shown proof of concept yet. When they are in on a David Sanders type next year, if things go the way I think they're going to go this year, then at the very least, you're like, okay, so we're talking to 2026 and 2027 guys now, which means Nebraska has been talking to them for 2 years now, just like everybody else has, if not a little bit longer. And you're coming off of hopefully a bowl game and a 7 or 8 win season. And you can say, hey, see, we're moving in the right direction. And look at what we've done. We just sent Bryce Benhart to the NFL, and we just sent Ben Scott to the NFL. And these were guys that didn't have draft grades when we got here, right? Then you've got proof of concept. Then you've got the relationship. So I don't know if they're going to get David Sanders or not, but I don't, not that it doesn't matter because he's obviously a really good football player, but this is the part of the process Nebraska's in. And they're, I think, even a little ahead of schedule being in on guys like David Sanders.
These are the three things. These are the three other schools. It's just listen to what he says about the other three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Searles and I have a great relationship. That's our offensive line coach, Stacy.
Yeah, Georgia.
Yeah. He's been recruiting me since he was at UNC, so me and him go way back. I think they're doing a great job. They brought in some good 2024 guys. Mason Short's coming into Georgia, and that's one of my really good friends throughout this whole time in my recruiting process. So Georgia's done a great job. They were one of my early offers as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia's always been at the top of the list. Tennessee, okay, well, people think Tennessee may be a little bit of a – I think they're the dark horse in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Just because this part at the end, just being around him a little bit, and it was a little bit, right? So I'm not saying like we're sending love letters or anything, but I'm not a letter writer anymore. I feel like you can just be yourself at Tennessee. There's nothing you have to do differently, even though it's a big SEC school that wins a lot of games and is in contention every year. I feel like I can go there and be myself. Like I can develop me. That lets me know. I know what he means when he says that because I know his personality. He's, like I said, a guy who wants to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't really talk about football around the house. He's got little sisters. They don't want to hear about football. He's pretty well-rounded. Ohio State. They got the bump early because so he said, seeing them as a young kid, like I can go there and do the same thing. They've had some good tackles. Ohio State got the bump early. I had only been there until recently, but Ohio State was kind of different. They've done a phenomenal job. Coach Fry is an amazing offensive line coach. He's shown he can develop guys and push them to the next level. He's passionate about what he's doing. I feel like this coaching staff and my playing style can mesh really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all that to say there's some things in there that he's looking for.
So I heard 3 different things there.
Yeah.
Number 1, Ohio State, I heard good football fit.
Yep.
Number 2, Georgia, I heard relationship.
Yep.
Number 3, Tennessee, I heard off-field stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the 3 things I heard that he cares about, obviously, and I don't know what he cares about most.
Yeah.
I don't know which one moves the needle the most for him, but those are the 3 different things I heard from those 3 schools.
So, with Nebraska, it was a little more, it wasn't vague, but I do know what he's saying. Like he's talking about the peer recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously a big deal. He also wants to be in on the early side of, if it was Nebraska, like that it was a positive, he'd like to be in on the early side of success.
Mm-hmm. He wants to build. He wants to be a help builder.
I can help be a part of something that is.
Some people like getting in on the ground floor of things.
Exactly.
That's what a lot of the people at Hurrdat Sports like, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them had other options.
That was me.
There's a lot of, hey, let's build something.
That's totally me.
Let's make something our own
Yeah.
and build it from the ground up. And that way we can do it the way we want to do it. And then we can be, again, you talk about ownership. You have more ownership when you go to Georgia and or you go to Ohio State and you're just like, hey, next man up, let's go. It's an NFL machine, right? Like, great. Like, if that's what you want, cool. But if there's other things you care about, then just being the next guy to go to the NFL from Ohio State or Georgia or wherever, then there might be other places that are a good fit for you.
So, and I just think, I don't know. I would not be, if they can get him back here on the
27th.
On the 27th.
There is like a different level of satisfaction when you are an early adopter too, right? Like when you're, we see it with people. This is a weird example, but you see it with people in like bands they like a lot.
Yeah.
If they like a band before it gets popular, they get really like possessive over that.
Yeah.
They kind of, they almost gatekeep a little bit. And not that that's what David Sanders or anybody going to Nebraska would do, but
I have a couple of guy friends that were early in on people that weren't really good looking yet, at least in my opinion.
Okay.
And they would kind of tell you the same, but there were these other things. And then it's like a couple years later, it was like,
yeah, you're like, oh, where'd that come from?
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, who told you? So there is definitely something to that. But I guess I don't get the doom and gloom. Even when I retweeted it, it was like, well, we're clearly going to be 4th. And I was like, God, I bet you're a lot of fun at parties. Like what?
That's how I felt the whole time.
Like, what do you say to that?
We had the whole thing with
if you get that guy back twice,
you're at least in it. Like,
he's not wasting his time. So
you got a shot.
Keep an eye on see if they can get him back on the 27th.
We will keep an eye on that. He announces August 17th, so little ways left on that one, but we'll see how that progresses. Coming up next, we're going to switch gears, talk a little Major League Baseball with Jesse Rogers from ESPN.
We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
When there's a shot to center field, crushed, high and deep, and this ball is long gone. What a shot by Ravi. His second home run of the day. It's 3-0 Red Sox. Swung on and hammered. Deep right center. Way back and gone. A home run for Otani.
2-2 to half. Swinging a ball in the air, right field and deep. Going! Gone! Second 3-run homer for Ian Happ today.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Jesse Rogers of ESPN. Jesse, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Just trying to make it. It's like you blinked and all of a sudden there's two things. I got a big St. Louis buddy, listens to the show every day, and I was talking about the Milwaukee Brewers. It was regression, and we did this thing at the beginning of the season, and I said if there's a team that's most likely to not make the playoffs, it's got to be the Brewers. 2 frontline starters, your closers on the shelf to start the season. I look up and they're in first place, and he was quick in our inbox. He said, "Hey, don't forget. Here come the Cardinals. They're in second place." And I looked at my partner, Jesse, and I go, "You know what? That's right. I had the Cardinals in the playoffs. I didn't think they'd have 2 bad years in a row. Go St. Louis. Who surprises you more, the Brewers or St. Louis?
Boy, it's actually a good question. Probably Milwaukee. I mean, they lose their manager, who was highly touted. They lose that pitching that that we all know, Corbin Burns and everything. Thought they'd take a little bit of a step back. Just hasn't happened. So yeah, I mean, I thought St. Louis would rebound at least a little bit. I actually didn't think St. Louis would be in this position, but that's a little less shocking than Milwaukee having the lead that they've had, the offense that they've put together there. I don't think many people can name more than a couple Brewers like Yelich and Hoskins. Who can you name after that, right? So, yeah, I would put Milwaukee as one of the surprises in the league for sure.
Jesse, want to stay in the NL for a second here. Obviously, the Phillies have been playing incredible baseball the entire season, but I don't know. It just seems like maybe there's a little bit more in the tank there. Am I grading them on too high of a curve, or it doesn't seem like they've maybe reached kind of their top level yet?
Oh, I don't know about that. The start that they had, I think they played great for so long. They've actually had a little bit of a dip because Schwarber and Harper were out of the lineup. Ranger Suarez came back down to earth, but their starting pitching has been so good. We already know the lineup is pretty deep. Alec Bohm with this incredible season. I'm not sure how much better they can play. Now, recently, they, like I said, a little dip, but when you take the totality of their 90 games or whatever, it's pretty darn good. I mean, I would pick them to win the World Series now because of their starting pitching. I mean, it's healthy for the most part. It's good. It's deep. They can send 4 out there. So I'm not sure how much better in its totality Philadelphia can play. But that's how good they are that you think they could even have another level. So whether it's great or really great, they're just really good. They're just really good, and I think they'll probably have a little dip here and there at times. Just pace themselves. They've been to the postseason a lot. I was talking to Dabrowski the other day about it, and it's like, yeah, well, we'll get to that point if we have an 8-9 game lead late in September. We'll take our foot off the gas and get ready for the postseason. Team is really stacked, and they are hungry for a World Series there.
Jesse, it's interesting. Maybe it's shame on me because I always kind of fall for it, but what is wrong with Toronto? Like, they tried just about everything, and every year it's supposed to be, maybe this is, and it, like, what is going on?
No, I can tell you exactly what's going on, and it gets hidden a little bit. Left-handed hitting. That's it. They don't have it. They don't have enough of it. They never have, and they keep getting exposed because of it. Their best players are righties, and righties can get neutralized, especially in crunch time, especially in the postseason, especially over time. Teams learn how to pitch to those right-handers because there are so many more right-handed pitchers in the league. You start to figure out right-handed dominant teams. Chicago White Sox in their rebuild failed because they didn't have enough left-handed hitting. The Blue Jays are going to fail because they don't have enough left-handed hitting. The Yankees were on the verge of failing with this group until they got Juan Soto. What happens? Their lineup gets balanced out and it takes off. It's just a small thing that people don't think about. You need left-handed slug, even more than right-handed sluggers, I should say, because there are so many more right-handed pitchers. It's a great stat I bring up about the White Sox that illustrate this. In 2021, the White Sox won their division, looked great, played the Astros in the playoffs, right? And their right-handed hitters, okay, in the playoffs, hit .295 against the Astros right-handed pitchers. Good number, right? You hit .295 in a playoff series, pretty good. They also slugged .295. Every single hit from a right-handed hitter against right-handed pitching was a single. Right-handed, the slug gets reduced. You need lefties to mash against righties. That, I know it's very specific, but it really goes to what the Blue Jays' problems have been. And I've heard GM say it, our righties can hit righties. No, they can hit them a bit. They can hit against the bad righties. They can't hit against playoff righties. And this is something the Blue Jays failed. And the thing is, they went after Ohtani, and then they stopped. They didn't go after Bellinger in a big way. They didn't go after other lefties that they could have made. Juan Soto. They stopped after Ohtani, and it really surprised me. So there's my long-winded answer.
Would you move on from Vlad?
Well, probably not, because, you don't necessarily have to start over. You just have to fix that part of it. Look at the Boston Red Sox. They have good left-handed hitting. They're not a great team on paper. They're 49-40. Why? Because they're 10 games over 500 against right-handed pitching. When a righty starts, the Boston Red Sox are 10 games over. All they have is like 3 good lefties. That's what you need, a couple good lefties. Now, they're easier, it's easy to say, hard to find, but I don't necessarily think the Blue Jays have to blow things up. But their front office hasn't recognized their deficiency. So I don't think I would trade Vlad, because that indicates you're really starting over. I'm not close to it, like the people up in Toronto. So if they think they can't retool, then yeah, I guess you do have to trade him, but I wouldn't do it.
How much of the kind of equation if you're the Blue Jays figuring it out has to do with the rest of the division? You mentioned the Red Sox, and they're only in third place. You've got two of the handful of best teams, even though the Yankees are not playing well right now in that division. The Orioles are young and dominant right now. Like, how much of that has to go into the equation of, okay, maybe just on this time frame, we can't retool in a way that makes us competitive in our own division?
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely the reason to start over. There's no doubt. That would be the reason. And you're right. That might just set them in that direction. The Yankees never really take a huge step back. Baltimore is now on this cycle of being good for a while. I think the Red Sox with their new front office is going to be better than worse. Let's put it that way. So I think you're right. I think that could be the decision maker. In a vacuum, it feels like they have a long way to go. But, put them in another division, it wouldn't be as hard. So that could be the determining factor, no doubt.
Jesse, for you, what's the difference between Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt Jr.?
Witt has a little bit more speed, right? I mean, I think that would probably be it. They're both really good. I think Witt is an MVP caliber player right now. Gunnar Henderson might get there. He might get there. But if I was starting a team at shortstop, I think I would take Witt over Gunnar Henderson. But it's close. I mean, it's close. But I love Bobby Witt Jr. I just think that he's MVP caliber right now.
Jesse, let's talk about Bobby Witt Jr. for a second in the context of all-star selections, right? One of, I believe, 32 first-time all-stars, and a group that skews pretty young. I think 19 under 27 all-stars as well. Like, what do those numbers tell you about where the game is going? And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I mean, youth is served in this game more and more these days. Your peak seems to be in your mid-20s, late 20s. Used to be more like late 20s, early 30s. But I also think it has something to do with just like Corbin Carroll. Like, this game is just so weird offensively. Like, pitching is a little bit more if you're healthy. We know who the good ones are. You got to stay healthy. But hitting is just so wacky these days. There are so many guys that are below average this year. You thought they'd be better, and so I think it goes to the volatility of the sport on offense is what I'm getting at. Youth is more and more important here, maybe because young guys have better hand-eye coordination or something, but also just there's so much volatility at the plate that one year you're an all-star and rookie of the year, next year you're the 5th worst hitter in the National League. I'm talking about Corbin Carroll. So I think volatility at the plate in this era of baseball is significant, and I think it's better to have some more recognizable names. It's always good to have first-time all-stars, right? I get that, a few of them. But I think people like to see the perennial Aaron Judges and Shohei Ohtanis, the guys people know more than 30 first-timers or whatever the case may be. And I think you get the first-timers because hitting is so unpredictable at this day and age.
All in or all out on the Seattle Mariners?
I'm moving out. I picked them to win the division, but I'm moving out. I don't know how they fix their offense at the deadline. It doesn't even feel like one guy can do it. I picked Julio Rodriguez to win the MVP. I'm going to look bad there. I think Houston's going to track them down. They just can't hit. And they're good enough at home to survive and battle and stuff. But Basically, winning at home only on your pitching is no way to win a division. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't even hit that much at home. So they lead the world in strikeouts at the plate. They couldn't score more than 3 runs forever for a while. I don't know how that gets fixed, and that's if they stay healthy on the mound. Always a question mark. I think Houston runs them down. Houston, I mean, think about Houston's front office versus Seattle come deadline time. Who the heck is going to be more aggressive, right?
Yeah.
Jim Crane is nuts as an owner in a good way, if you're a fan. And Seattle's as conservative as they get. They'll probably buy and sell, even though they're in first place. So I like Seattle coming into the year. I liked Garver and Haniger in the pickups, and I loved Julio Rodriguez. It's just not good enough. They're just not hitting enough. So I think Houston's going to run them down.
I know they're waiting on Dunning to get healthy, but do the Rangers have more in the tank?
I don't think so.
Really?
Maybe they have one push in them. It's just, look, it is hard to repeat, and sometimes it's hard to even get back to the postseason. Everyone, Bruce Bochy, the magician, you still got to have the horses. I don't think so. I could be wrong. I see Arizona. They've already started their run. I like them to get back into the playoff race, and I thought that even a month ago.
Me too.
I never had that feeling from Texas. I could be wrong. 6 under, 6 games out. Maybe they have a run in them. I just have a bad feeling. Their bullpen's bad. They're counting on, I don't know, some starting pitching to get back healthy and go on a run. Everything has to be perfect for the Rangers to go on the run, in my opinion, in terms of health. And I just have a feeling it's not going to happen. But I'm open to being wrong. They're back to +8, plus run differential, even though they're 6 under. So there are some signs. I just don't see it for some reason. They're 9 games under on the road, and they're not very good against the better teams in the league. So they're putting together, it feels like with a Band-Aid right now, and they're still 6 under. So I don't see it with the Rangers.
It's kind of how I felt about the Diamondbacks, because especially with that staff. But I know they don't have the depth as some teams, but when they're healthy, that's a pretty good baseball team.
Texas or Arizona?
Arizona.
Yeah, they are. I loved what they did in the offseason. They took their surplus in money and put it back into the roster. Merrill Kelly's supposed to come back. We'll see about Eduardo Rodriguez. I haven't seen news on him recently, but Zach Gallen just came back after an injury.
They'll get Montgomery back.
And hopefully a better version of him. All these guys need to be the best versions of themselves. But they're 500 now, and it really haven't played great baseball. Corbin Carroll can't be worse in the second half. So I do feel like Arizona's glass is half full, where Texas is, I don't know. I'm not sure. But I'm open to being wrong.
We're talking to Jesse Rogers of ESPN. Jesse, let's stay in the NL West here for a second. My partner here is a big Dodgers fan, so I'm going to ask his question for him. He's constantly disappointed in the Dodgers, despite the fact they're always 20 games over 500.
Yeah.
Do you look at them as currently constructed as a real contender for the World Series? Or do they got a little bit of work to do?
Yeah, a little bit of work. I think just on the mound, I think everybody would agree. If they get Betts back, the lineup's fine. I have no problem with the lineup. So you gotta make sure you're good on the mound. I could really see them pushing hard for Garrett Crochet of the White Sox. I think that there's a deal there. But all the contenders are going to be lining up. I just think that Friedman will recognize how aggressive he might need to be to get a guy like Crochet, who has 2 more years of team control. So if they do the work on the mound, I think they'll be okay. And let's put it this way. I wonder what Baltimore's going to do, because they love to hold on to their prospects. I don't wonder what Friedman's going to do. Now, I'm not saying he's the GM version of Steve Cohen or something. He's not ultra. Yeah, he doesn't push all his chips in. But I think Friedman recognizes the window they're in and the deficiencies they might have. We'll see what Clayton Kershaw looks like, but I don't think you can count on him. I think there's one big pitching move by Friedman in him before the deadline, and that should make them a little bit more fortified for the playoffs.
You think the Mets get rid of Severino?
Look, I think it's a good point. I think
he's
David
interesting
Stearns,
at the deadline. Somebody's going to try to grab him.
Yeah, I think David Stearns' desire is to sell. Now, he can't do that if they're in the race. So what's the next best thing? A little bit of selling and buying at the same time. And so I could see them moving him, but then adding somewhere else. But I could also see him doing nothing, or even adding a little bit and not trading Severino. So, I mean, it's hard to trade starting pitching and stay in the race. I think what the Mets do will be directly proportionate to where they are in the standings come July 28th, 29th. I don't think he's going to do anything until the last minute. If they're where they are now, he's got to probably add or stay pat. If they fall even a few games back and under 500, I think moving Severino and maybe even Alonso is in the cards. But I think a soft sell is definitely possible with the Mets. But I think the standings will determine that as late as possible.
How would you describe Sean Manaea?
Certainly not a top end rotation pitcher. At times this year he's looked really good.
His variance is incredible.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I kind of think of them. They were teammates, Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea, right? We're in Oakland, right?
Yeah.
If I'm right.
Yeah.
I think of them kind of the same guy, the same way. The variance is large, but you know what? He's a good pitcher. Doesn't give up a ton of hits. He's a bit of a rotation guy, Sean Manaea. That's the way I look at him. He's no better than that. At times, maybe worse at different times. But he's having a good season, mid-3 ERA guy, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the stats in front of me. But I like him. I don't love him. I think that's the best way to put Sean Manaea. And I say the same thing about Frankie Montas when people ask me about him. As the difference is he's kind of the top end of the rotation. I guess they sort of are both maybe a higher end than they should be spot in the rotation. Manaea should be a 4, 3. Montas, same thing. But Montas is like the ace of the Reds. I don't see him that way. I don't feel him that way.
Jesse, we haven't talked about one of the most competitive divisions in the league yet. That's the AL Central. The Guardians continue to have that significant lead, but the Twins and Royals are both playing pretty good baseball this year. How do you see the AL Central shaking out? I assume that Cleveland will probably hold on for the division, but
I still wonder how Cleveland gets everybody out all the time.
It's going to be pretty competitive, though, down the stretch, huh?
Yeah, the Cleveland and Milwaukee, man. What is in the water in those cities? These teams just
it's the Great Lakes, man. You
amazing.
never know.
I just can't believe they're this good either. And you're right. The top end of the division much better than anyone thought. I actually picked the Royals to win the division just to be goofy, and I don't think it's going to happen. But the fact that they're even this good is a miracle. I still am not convinced about any of those teams in the playoffs. We know we see this out of the AL Central a lot. They look good on paper, and then they get to the playoffs and they don't survive. Minnesota did upset Toronto last year. Like I said, no left-handed hitting by the Blue Jays. But Cleveland actually is hitting much better than anyone thought, and then somehow they're getting enough people out. They demoted McKenzie. They demoted Logan Allen yesterday. It's like crazy. Sometimes teams just are good, and you can't figure it out. And it's one thing to be good, but they're 56 and 32.
Oh, they're really good.
Yeah. So, but I think all of us would still have doubts about any of those teams in the postseason against Baltimore or New York or even Houston if Houston keeps going the way they've been going. So I'm still in the AL Central is still in prove-it mode to me, despite Cleveland being as good as they are. And the numbers across the board for Cleveland, they don't have a weakness on paper. I still have my doubts about them in the postseason.
Let me get you out of here on this, Jesse. I said this this is almost a month ago. Yeah. Because they always prove me wrong, and I've seen them go into the All-Star break under 500 and wind up playing in the National League Championship. What are we doing with the Braves? They're going to get Acuna back at some point. They're treading water. They are playing in the same division as the Phillies. It's impossible to throw dirt on these guys, though, isn't it?
But is it possible to what? Ignore them?
Throw dirt on the Braves.
Yeah. No, I mean, the injuries have certainly contributed. Look, they lost the MVP and the Cy Young favorite entering the season. Let's give them a little bit of a break. They're gonna still have that wild card spot. They won't track down Philly, I don't think, but they'll secure, I think, that top wild card spot. Host a wild card series. He's going to add something. I think he could be on the margins or as big as a guy like Cody Bellinger. I think he adds a bat. I don't think he has to add too much on the mound, maybe a little bit because, you still want to fortify after losing Strider and everything. So we'll add some. But, Ronaldo Lopez has made up for it. Great 1-2 combination with Sale. I wouldn't count the Braves out. It does feel like it's the Phillies' year, but we've seen the Phillies win the wild card and upset the Braves. It could go the other way this year for all we know. But here's the thing. Anthopoulos, I think, is one of the best at it.
Yep.
So let's see what happens between now and July 30th. I wouldn't put it past him to add a big bat especially.
Lopez might be the best kept secret in the National League. He's been incredible.
Yeah, absolutely incredible.
His ERA is under. He's a 1.7 something guy. Yeah, he's been incredible.
I'm based in Chicago, so I saw him here with the White Sox, and of course that organization didn't get the best out of him. So he goes to a pitching-rich one, and he's just got electric stuff. He always had it, just couldn't harness it all. And he should start the All-Star game if it lines up. And I don't know if he's Cy Young favorite because he doesn't have the name recognition, but the numbers certainly say Cy Young favorite. So I think the Braves are going to be good and fine, but they need more to make themselves World Series sort of contenders because of the injuries they've had.
That's Jesse Rogers from ESPN. Jesse, we appreciate the time as always, and we'll talk again soon.
Anytime. Be well, guys.
Thanks, Jesse.
That's Jesse Rogers from ESPN.
Lopez isn't in the top 40 in strikeouts in the league, but he's got the best ERA. You don't see that.
Not anymore, especially. Yeah. Not anymore. Like that used to be a little bit more common, but you don't see a ton of that anymore.
What in the world?
You can see, though, is Union Omaha. If you get to unionomaha.com, they come back to town July 27th, Werner Park. They will be hosting Chattanooga, 7 p.m. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get your tickets. You can also get merch. You can check out what's going on with the club and the community. Make sure you get over to unionomaha.com. We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on KFOR in Lincoln for this third hour as well. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
Nothing. Jordan got me thinking. I was texting, anyway, my St. Louis buddy, who's actually in Omaha. I just love St. Louis. I sent him a picture of that car that couldn't park.
Yeah.
And what did it say? It said STL Birds or something like that.
Yeah.
I said, weird. St. Louis fans not being able to do things correctly.
I'm pretty good today. Did you see that?
And he goes, he didn't even try. I mean, that car was splitting the white line.
Yeah.
And he said, he's a big Cardinals guy. And he's like, just imagine if Goldie and Arenado were having decent seasons. And it just got me thinking. There are a lot of teams playing well without their dudes.
Yeah.
Either in the lineup or not doing anything worth a darn.
Yeah.
Arizona's doing it without Carroll. Seattle's doing it without Rodriguez. Who's your number one? Bello? He's your guy, right?
I guess. I don't know. There's like three guys that are
watching Sale in Atlanta make you mad.
Yes.
He's
watching him pitch at all makes me mad.
He's all of a sudden found it.
Well, all of a sudden he's like, hey, my arms are going to fall off every year. He didn't pitch for like the last 3 years he was in Boston.
Did we look that up once?
I probably, because I get mad.
I think I gave you a number for over-under of innings pitched. And it was
that seems like something I would do.
I think it might have been off air after the show. What were you going to say, Shane?
I was going to say, and I saw the car parked, the St. Louis car.
Yeah.
That maybe that guy did exactly what he wanted to do because he was right on the line in the middle of the vehicle.
Yeah, he split it.
But
it wasn't even the type of vehicle where you'd think,
well,
I don't want dings.
Because maybe his doors opened up wide. He thought it was too windy out. I don't know. I'm gonna look out for him. Normally, I don't do that for St. Louis guys, but I'll look out for that guy.
This dude said windy. Yeah, that's what it was, Shane.
Yep,
it was a little windy.
I don't think that's it.
Wasn't it?
I don't think that's it.
I think he did a good job.
I mean, I look at the Reds. Like, when's Hunter Green going to be Hunter Green? Ever? Montas is there. He is their one, though.
Yeah, the ones are different in the regular season than they are in the postseason.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
and the National League's going to figure that out.
Yeah.
Did you see the AL's pitching staff?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wowzer.
It's not bad. That's why I don't take the Red Sox seriously, because I'm like, there's not a real one on that staff.
So I get the Yankees are playing well.
Well,
or are at the top of the division,
yeah.
or we're at the top of the division, but they're not playing. I mean,
they're not
about
playing well right now.
And they've lost 10 out of their last 13 series. But when you look at that staff, like they're going, Rodon is still the one right now.
Yeah.
With Stroman and Cortez, Schmidt's still on the 60. Like, I don't know. When old Lewis Gill's rolling out there, are you like, I don't know, man. But he's having he's having a good year. Is my point.
I don't go out there a lot and be like, uh-oh, that guy scares me. Like, there's not a lot of there's not any of those.
So, like, what's the real difference between? Is it the offense between the Yankees and the Red Sox? 'Cause I get your doom and gloom, but it's not like the front line of. Now, granted, remember I gave you the stat about the Yankees. Now, this was a month ago, but they had gone 4 innings. The first
68 games of the season, I think.
Yeah, 60-some games.
Yeah.
So their starters are getting it done. But I'm like, the conversation started with the postseason being different.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about the Yankees.
That's fair. I don't necessarily look at the Yankees as.
I mean, it's certainly different than Burns and Bradish, right? I mean,
yeah, that's not a team that I look at and I go, oh, that's necessarily super scary in the postseason. But I do look at them and go, like, that's a team that's going to be hard to pass in the division because regular season they've got good arms. Postseason, maybe they flame out, but I look at it as like, okay, Boston has to climb above these teams. And I think they're too solid regular season wise with the offense. And then the pitchers at least going, I know they finally broke that streak or whatever, but getting it done in the regular season, I just don't think they're climbing past them.
Yeah, I mean, talk about getting ran down. Padres actually act like they have a pulse. No Yamamoto, no Buehler.
Yeah.
Kershaw had the setback, although he's going to get the rehab start.
I think he did the rehab start yesterday, or he was, or this weekend.
Yeah, it's coming. The rehab start's coming.
Yeah.
So he threw.
He did a simulated. He did the simulated. That's what.
Yeah, come on, man. That's my team.
He
did the simulated session.
Simulated rehab. What's the difference? I mean,
Well, the last rehab start he had, it was like, no.
Yeah.
Just to go run through the Indians or the Guardians and tell me how they're getting people out.
I don't know. I don't know.
And it's like Jesse said, they're not that's a really good record.
Yeah, it's not like you look at them and you're like, they're 8 games above 500 or, like Seattle with their 6 games above 500. Like you can look at it, their run differential is like +4 or something and be like, okay, yeah, I get they're in first, but it's not super impressive. Cleveland is +97, I believe, run differential. They're 24 games above 500, and they're
exactly +97.
They've got the 5th best run differential in the league. They're killing it right now. And again, you look at them and you go like, I don't know if they can win a playoff series.
Do you know who has the most double-digit run games in the league?
I'm gonna guess Cleveland since we're talking about them.
That would be the Dodgers. Do you know who does not have the greatest runs against differential?
The Dodgers.
That would be the Dodgers.
What are they, like 78?
No, it's 104. It's high.
Oh, okay.
But do you know who's at 106?
Who? Okay, I just looked at this. So the Yankees and Orioles are both above 100.
Correct.
The Phillies are above 100.
Correct.
The Dodgers are above 100. Those are the only teams above 100. Then it's Cleveland at 97.
That's uncannily correct. Now, who's at the top?
I want to say Philly at like 109.
It's very good. They're in the National League. Who's atop the American?
That's gonna be your Baltimore Orioles at like 106.
Isn't that crazy?
And then the Yankees are like
in that division,
101, something like that.
In that division,
yeah.
I feel like the reason I asked Jesse the question about the Blue Jays is because I feel like the Blue Jays are the White Sox to me. But at least the White Sox went to the playoffs or won the division, and
a couple years ago, yeah.
It was 21?
Yeah.
I fall for it. I think it's a me thing.
The Blue Jays just never
I'm kind
really
of taking it personally.
Did anything? I mean, they made a wild card last year. I think that's the best they did. And they got bounced.
Yeah. What do we?
We getting credit? They getting credit for that?
I don't know, but remember the whole not Terrence Knighton thing. The whole announcing a coaching hire thing made me think of, because Jesse said it. Well, they went after Shohei Ohtani and then they stopped. Remember when everybody thought he was going to Toronto? I was like, wow, Shohei's going to Toronto.
Not going to Toronto.
He's not going to Toronto.
No.
Instead, he's making about $12 a year, and he's gonna get paid until he's 70.
I think he's probably okay money wise.
So I wonder, will we be saying Happy Shohei Ohtani Day?
No, probably not.
there's a lot of money on the back end.
I know, but it's always Bobby Bonilla Day because there's 10 other guys getting paid more than Bonilla right now on July 1st. But it's just always Bobby Bonilla Day. Even when it's Shohei Ohtani Day, it's still going to be Bobby Bonilla Day. Can I go off on something else I'm mad about in baseball right now?
Oh, Lord.
So Jesse brought up Dave Dombrowski with the Phillies, right?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Why do people keep firing that guy?
I don't know. Trash treasure.
Because he's
pretty good for you.
He's pretty damn good everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
I was looking at because I was like, man, what? Because I was trying to remember.
He may be hard to work for. I don't know.
Oh yeah, but you know what's not hard to work for? Winning. You know who hasn't done a lot of winning since Dombrowski left? The Red Sox.
Yeah, but you didn't have him very long.
They
What'd you
had
have him 15 to 19?
Yeah. 4.5, 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
But
he's got rid of some pieces in a hurry, though.
He's been good everywhere he goes. Yeah. Now, maybe that's an ownership thing where it's like, hey, we're not going to pay people, so why do we need Dombrowski?
Hey, Shane, how did you feel about the Tigers with Dombrowski?
It's the only time they've been good consistently.
He put together some arms.
He did. It's the only time, that World Series appearance is about the best they've had it. Uh-huh. Then you want to go back to, go back through his whole history. Go back to the Expos.
Or the White Sox.
Go back to the go back, though, do the whole thing. He's been good his entire career.
I'm so glad I didn't say anything bad about the Braves. I wanted to.
You ready to bury him?
But I just remembered.
Yeah.
The year they played for the championship, they were
puttering along.
They were 8 games under 500 at the break.
And here they come. No Cunha.
Yeah, when's his 60 up?
I'm not sure, but I think he might be on a little longer in the 60.
I want to ask him what happened to Tim Anderson, too.
Cut.
God, that guy sucks. Apparently not a good person either.
See ya. Coming up next, we'll wrap up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 3 and the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. If you missed anything, you can always go back to YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and listen to us. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. So I was watching a lot of, Wimbledon this weekend, as one does if you're me. And
yeah, just random. You just woke up yesterday firing me off text.
Well, listen, got some feelings about Ben Shelton, and
I was actually, for whatever I was watching it because
I just assumed you're watching everything.
Caleb is early, so yeah. Caleb was gone, and Ryder and Jay were at.
Those were like 8 or 9.
Their sisters.
Yeah,
they were doing what? No, Zoe was home. Jay was gone, and it was just Micah, and I'm like, I don't really want to watch. There was a lot of bad shows on.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you one that I tried to sit through that I ended up turning off. I don't get the whole Suits thing.
Yeah?
Yeah. Gave that one about 19 minutes.
I liked it for a while. It gets
I
real
can't relate. There's just nothing that, I'm like.
Nothing you can relate to there?
Mm-mm.
Unlike the serial killer shows where you're like, yeah, that's right up my alley.
Yes. I mean, kind of. At least I can understand. That didn't even sound right. Whoops. Oh, yeah. Never mind. We won't even try to explain that one. It's all about trying to understand the mind, Ravi. I see what you tried to do there.
I feel like
did I do that to me?
I feel like I pretty successfully did that.
Yeah. Well, back to tennis.
No,
speaking of minds.
Yeah, so I'm watching Coco Gauff yesterday, right?
Wow.
One of the most talented players on the women's circuit.
I swear I'm not a killer.
I'm just gonna keep talking. I'm trying to stay on your good list. And I'm watching Coco Gauff, one of the most talented players in the world, multiple, winner, majors winner. Like, she's not new at this, right? And she has. I don't think it's unfair to call it a complete meltdown yesterday against Navarro, who is a couple years removed from being in college, was the NCAA champion 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I guess, in 2021. Like, much less experienced, although a good player in her own right. And
yeah, she's talented.
We're watching Coco Gauff just have a total meltdown. Like, she cannot hit her forehand.
Did you know who she was talking to real time when she said
yes.
that? Okay.
Yeah. So she keeps pleading. You can see it on the broadcast to her coaching box because they're allowed to talk to him now and give instruction or whatever, which used to be a big thing. They would kind of try and secretly talk to their coaches with eye contact and stuff.
Hey,
and
2 blinks means one-handed winner.
But
3, if I tap my neck, that means stay away from the forehand.
Yeah, they go, kind of do the baseball signal stuff, like wiping the shirt down. But so she keeps
body second serve. Get it into the body. Just tap, tap, tap.
She keeps appealing to her coaches as her forehand is totally falling apart. Now, she's had some inconsistency on her forehand, and I promise this isn't going to be like a real nitty-gritty tennis segment, but to get to what we're talking about here, she's had some inconsistencies with her forehand before, but she looks, desperate for them to tell her anything to fix what's happening here. And I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, if I'm Navarro and I'm seeing this, isn't that the biggest confidence booster I could possibly get? It's just, I'm just going to hammer this forehand. She looked like unnerved to the point where, like, she almost looked like she had the yips with the forehand.
Yeah, I thought you were going to be more down on her for.
I didn't love the body
being so
language.
dramatic.
Well, that's part of it, right? But it's not just. First of all, what do you want your coaching box to do in that situation? Like, what do you want them to just magically fix your forehand?
Did you see Gilbert?
Yeah, he like gave her and it sounded like, at least the commentators were saying, he wanted her to shape the shots more, put a little more spin on it, less pace. And that didn't really help. Like, she was just hammering everything into the net. But I'm just like, okay, what do you expect them to do in this moment? Tennis is one of the most individual sports there is. Mm-hmm. Like, you are just out there by yourself. It's you versus you as much as it is you versus anyone else. And so I didn't love the body language. I didn't love the fact that she didn't seem to be able to, like, self-regulate in that moment, because that's the difference. I heard this stat about Roger Federer. And he played 1,500 matches in his career. Can you guess the percentage of points that he won over the course of his career? So the entire time, not games, not matches, points.
Just like individual.
Yeah, like
points?
15 love, 15. How many points did he win percentage-wise over the course of his career?
We've got an incredible record, so it has to be more than half.
Yeah.
It's tough. I will say 58%.
54%. One of the three best players ever only won 54% of his points.
Hey, you know what? I think Joker is in the 50s as well.
Probably. I haven't seen his stats specifically.
Okay, so was it it wasn't the round of 16. It was 2 matches ago. Was that in the entirety of his career?
With Djokovic?
He may be. Man, I may be misremembering this. It's going to piss me off.
It's probably close to what Federer's number is, though.
I think it was like 56%.
Yeah.
I can't remember, though, if it was since something or post something or
the whole career.
Or his whole career.
But it probably doesn't really matter, because I'm guessing.
Google. Let me see. I think it was 56%.
But
I kind of saw it in passing.
But here's my point there, right? So, like, whether you consider Federer the best player of all time, he's certainly no worse than second or third, right? Only won 54% of the points he played in his entire career. That means the difference between him being Roger Federer and being like Andy Roddick is probably 3 or 4%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're probably in that neighborhood.
Right? So, and the difference between him being Andy Roddick and outside, or the difference between him being Roger Federer and being outside the top 100, probably like 5 or 6%. Right? So we're talking about these tiny margins of error. You have to be able to self-regulate, because you know why you can win that many majors and only win 4% more of your points than dead even?
It's the same thing we liked about his playing style. He comes across as unflappable.
Unflappable, and he wins every point that matters.
Yeah.
All 4 percentage points of those points were the points that mattered, right? And so I'm watching Coco Gauff have a total breakdown yesterday. And I'm not saying she's going to end up being Roger Federer or whatever. But it's just, I had that stat in my head from a couple days before, and then I'm watching this happen in real time.
And you just watched center where Blake he
had opportunities.
Couldn't win any meaningful point, and that's ultimately what cost him against center.
Had same thing with Tiafoe and Djokovic. Yeah. Tiafoe had opportunities. He was up 2-1 and was up 30 love.
That's my guy from Black Panther, right?
Yes, the guy you think looks like the guardian. They're the border guard on Black Panther.
Yes.
He was up.
And no, I don't think we all look alike.
He was up love 30.
Just those two.
To break Joker in the fourth set. Joker comes back, wins that, ends up winning the match. Like, though the difference between being Novak Djokovic and being Francis Tiafoe is right in those moments. It's the 4% when you're down 30 love to get broken, and then you come back and win that set.
You played against a lot of good players to have that percentage be that high.
Yeah.
Because that's, again, it's each individual point.
Yeah. But that's how, and it's not just tennis, right? That's kind of where I wanted to go with this. Like, we don't have a ton of time left here, but isn't that a formula? Like, if you're Nebraska football,
that's a beautiful segue that we can get to tomorrow because, well, he was not happy. I had to talk him off the ledge yesterday. Nebraska, woo. You talk. That's one of the guys. You can't have nice things. Oh man, we're gonna be okay.
Yeah,
we're gonna be okay.
Yes, indeed.
If there had been any headway with TK, he'd have really lost it. But
like, look at the way Nebraska lost.
That's
games
how I
last
feel
year.
about. That's how I feel about the run game.
Yeah.
And scoring touchdowns.
Yes.
Or like, there's lots getting off the field on third down that they couldn't get off the field. It's like you're talking minuscule percentage points.
Yes. Look at the way Nebraska lost games last year. You're talking about stuff in the margins, right? You're talking about between like 2% better and 4% better, or 4% better and 6% better. We're not talking about, hey, we got to get 50% better. Like, there's some things that they need to get 50% better at.
And it's more meaningful in football because we don't have near the data or the volume
of data
of data that Federer does,
Yes.
and it's still huge.
Yes. Right? It's like, if you look at the way Nebraska lost,
So going
games,
from if teams are converting 41% of third downs versus 36%,
that's the difference.
That's a ton.
That might be 2 wins.
Yeah, it's 3 less drives probably.
That might be 2 wins, right? You could be and so I look at it like individual plays rather than like drives or touchdowns or whatever, right? Because then you get a larger set of data points. If you could say, hey, we're gonna turn the tide on 5% of our plays this year, is that not an 8-win team instead of a 5-win team?
Well, statistically speaking, look at the difference between a top 20 defense and a top 15 defense.
Not a lot.
It's not a ton.
You're tiny margin. Look at the difference between I went all the way out to top 40.
For offense?
For defense.
Oh.
The difference between Nebraska being number 18 and being number 40, less than a touchdown a game. Right? Get better on 5% of your plays. Can you go from being Francis Tiafoe to Novak Djokovic? That's the question.
Yeah, I'm going to do some more digging when I was doing the rushing
on those
stuff.
numbers.
Yep.
That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We will be back tomorrow here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
See you. Have a good day. Love you.